You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Good morning. Welcome back. 8:06. Nice to have you along on this Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. Producer Parker Olson standing by in Madison A2, Brittany Merlot, Chad Holmes, all coming up. Dan Shafer, Civic Media political editor and founder of the Recombobulation area, will join us at the bottom of the hour. And we have a long list of items to talk about, including a candidate for governor making a six-figure ad buy already for the governor's race next year. Meanwhile, a sitting state Supreme Court justice has raised $0 in the last reporting period for her potential reelection next year. That and so much more to discuss with Dan Shafer along the way. But first, let's talk about Chad Holmes and the problem with Chad Holmes. Chad was off last week. I had a poker tournament in Vegas. One of these, when he gets off mute, he's going to tell us all about after Brittany's forecast. But here's the thing. He hasn't posted anything from Vegas for days and days. And then he didn't show up here until 6 seconds before the opening theme began. So up until 6 seconds before the theme, I didn't know if this guy had already lost his shirt, lost his mortgage, lost an arm. I don't know what, but he's here and allegedly has some stories to tell us that he did not want to share prior to now. Mr. Holmes, I see two arms. I see you without any bruises. I hope you have good stories to tell us after Brittany's forecast, maybe?
Maybe the point was not that I was hiding anything, but I had actually thought I wanted to be off of social media for a little bit.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah. I think everybody seems to think that everybody needs to know everything, and it's like, who needs?
No,
and there was nothing,
fine.
and there was nothing exciting. So, but there was, I still enjoyed myself. But yeah, I can fill in the gaps.
That's fine, but it's like in the movie Christmas Vacation. I mean, when you get used to an end of the year bonus and then finally you don't get it, there's something wrong. So when you're posting like every hand and then you just stop, it's good to get off the grid, but without any warning that you're jumping off the grid, I'm over here going, oh my God, what has happened to Chad? This is not so. Welcome back, buddy.
I'm glad you care, because it never occurred to me that anybody would think that. Boy, I sure do need a posting from Chad Holmes.
I did. I was missing. I told you last week. I really like those things before you left. So, all right. So Chad is here, and we'll have details on his Vegas poker trip right after we get an updated forecast from Brittany Merlot, whose forecast is as hot as Chad was hoping his hands would be in Vegas last week, or maybe hotter.
Yeah, you'll have to see which one's hotter. It's gonna get warm and muggy today. I mean, we're already feeling it. The humidity is high. Temperatures are in the mid 60s to mid 70s across the state. We're also looking at a moderate air quality out there. So a little bit of wildfire smoke still lingering, but it is going to be a bright, beautiful summery day. I'm talking upper 80s to low 90s, and that humidity is going to be making it feel more like the low to mid 90s all across the state. So my hair is already frizzed out. Ladies, it's going to be that kind of day, obviously. But of course, stay hydrated. Keep cool. As we go into tomorrow, the heat will leave the northern part of the state, but it is going to stay stuck for a majority of central and southern areas, as we have a stalled front right now into way northwestern areas. Actually, near Rice Lake, Spooner, and Hayward, you're already seeing some thunderstorms this morning. They just sparked up, little surprise ones out there. I didn't think they would start so early, but we are looking at that risk along that front today, really ramping up at about 4, and then that could move into the Eau Claire, Wausau area late tonight, maybe around 9 or 10 or so. But the Storm Prediction Center has put out a slight risk for severe weather, which is about a 2 out of 5 on the severe scale. We're looking at damaging wind gusts are possible. Of course, far, far northern Wisconsin today, and a tornado too. So stay weather savvy. We've got a lot of instability and moisture in the atmosphere, and we are looking at heavy rainfall too, where another 1 to 2 inches could fall. So some flash flooding risks. And again, this area is pretty much from Rice Lake to Phillips to Eagle River and north in the state. And then by tomorrow, that front works its way south, and then the risk turns into central Wisconsin and towards Madison and Milwaukee area. But again, that's tomorrow afternoon for you. Everybody else in the state, you're just hot and humid today.
So again, if you're in an area that is heavy with, it has more campers and campgrounds than it has
Right.
ties to broadcast stations, you're going to want to keep that Civic Media station or app handy for the latest developments and not have something sneak up on you when you're on the lake or out in the woods.
Absolutely. Very
Okay.
important.
Brittany, thank you so much. Have a great
Thank
day.
You too.
All right. Let's turn now toward Mr. Holmes's Las Vegas adventure and find out. Well, let's see. Let's start from the beginning, Chad, shall we? The World Series of Poker and the unfortunate attempt to get going on it, and we took note of your post about dealing with banks from afar.
Oh, that was fun.
Not fun.
No.
And that you were having trouble getting the funds that you did have, get them transferred properly for the entry fee. And if it wasn't going to work out, you're going to have to work on some other poker tournaments instead. So what was the general overview of Chad, the poker playing Vegas tourist last week?
Well, the first aspect was, and again, it is what it is. I I've never taken out that much money from my bank account, so
Yeah.
I guess they thought there was something wrong. And and the first time it was on the 4th, and there was nobody there to pick up the phone on the
Sure.
4th, so I was sort of stuck there. So then I tried again on the 5th. I called them up. Everything was all set. I went and tried to sign up. Had an issue again. And then it was like the bank said it must be on their end. And then the casino said, no, it must be on the bank's end. And then there was a third party operator, which apparently the bank works with to kind of help as well. And uh, I I could not get to talk to a human being. That was
Sure.
kind of a frustrating aspect. It's like you call up their number and there was no way to talk to a human being. So it's like, well, basically they say, too bad. And I guess I found out something that many people go through in this era of wonderful technology is when you don't have an opportunity to talk to a human being, some problems can continue. And that was actually the most frustrating aspect of it was that I had gone through the first two and I actually talked to a human being. They said everything is fine, but this third party operator who apparently does not have any live people answering customer phone calls, and then I was not able to be in the tournament I wanted to be in, which was the main event. So
I
it
know.
was a little frustrating.
Oh, understandably so. So how did you switch things up? What did you end up
Well,
doing?
I then just played in a couple of smaller tournaments, which was great, within the WSOP. Uh, but I just had no good luck.
Mhm.
And it's not about complaining because sometimes you have good luck, sometimes you have bad luck. But in my first tournament, I mean, early on, I get pocket aces, and actually that scares me because I don't want to get knocked out early in the tournament. But when you have pocket aces, it's the best hand you can possibly have. So you raise. But then the guy next to me raised again, and then I raised, and then he raised, and then I raised, and then we're all in. I'm all in, and he's got kings, I got aces. I'm in great shape, but there's always that opportunity that he
Mhm.
could luck out and knock me out. And that's what happened.
Oh.
I mean, it was a disappointing aspect. So then I played in another tournament the next day, and this time I lasted a while. It was sort of a struggle, but I was doing well, I thought, staying alive. And then finally I got this hand of kings, and I raise, and then the guy goes all in, and I go all in, and he has ace king, so I'm in great shape again.
Mhm.
But then boom, he gets an ace, and I'm out again. So it was
Just
one of those trips where I had bad luck. And the
yeah.
thing is, the way I look at it, I I would love to have good luck, but I
Mhm.
really just don't want bad luck. And back to back days, I had bad luck, and then I did make a little money playing some blackjack. So then and then I played some cash poker, which I gave my blackjack money away. So
Yeah.
in the end, it was what it was. It was fun. It was not as exciting as last year when I made the run, but it was nice to get away, and it's also nice to be back. And one of the nice things you realize when you're away for a little while, it's really nice to get back as well. So
Yeah, yeah. Did you, I mean, especially when you didn't have to pony up that big entry fee? I know some
right.
of us on social media encouraged you to do something really nice with the savings. Maybe Wayne Newton was having a meet and greet or something. Did you get to do anything fun away from the casino?
No, I go out there to play. I go out there to gamble.
Okay,
That's.
all
I mean,
right.
that's. And I mean, people always say that. Well, and
Yeah.
also, I don't rent a car, so I'm kind of limited on where I
Oh
go.
yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
I've made that mistake where every casino along the strip, every hotel looks like it's right next door. It is not right next door, and it's the desert. I mean, yeah, you're in a busy city, but those are long, hot walks. If you're going, oh, I'll just go from the Bellagio to the Luxor or whatever. It's like
right.
you quickly learn like no, that what they need in Vegas are like those habit trails for
Well, they have a
gerbils. They need more just underground trails going to all these places.
Well, they have a monorail, which
They do.
I
Yeah.
had, I use the monorail to get up and down the strip. But the one show I would love to have gone to was Penn and Teller because I saw them like 20 years ago. Love Penn and Teller, and but they're off the strip. They were really,
Oh, okay.
and I wasn't gonna grab a Uber. I've never been on an Uber, so maybe I should do that sometime.
You
I don't
should.
know.
It's easy enough.
But that was the one I was thinking about doing, and I think at some point I would love to do that again because I was just blown away by them. But
Mhm.
it was hot. It was hot. I tell you that. It is hot out there. You go in the summertime. People say, "Why would you go to Vegas in the summer?" Well, it's because that's when the WSOP is. But
Because
it is
yes.
hot, and I think that's one reason they do it is that
Mhm.
it gets tourism in during the hottest time of the year. And but it is just doggone hot. But
It is.
yeah, it
But
was.
I'm glad you had a good time. So you will try again next year?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, and I hope
Okay.
to play the
Th-
Maine next year,
This time
actually.
you're bringing a briefcase with you
Well, I
filled
mean,
with cash.
I'm gonna go figure things. I'm actually curious. I should try to get back on the phone to that third party operator, but that's just,
Yeah.
that's the thing that just drives me nuts. It's like,
Oh, of course.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm, and they always have the computer voice, and they say, "Well, try to explain what you want,
Mhm.
what the problem is." And then I would try to, and then they would try to, figure it out. Then if I say, I want to talk to somebody, we don't understand that. They
Yeah.
literally said, I said, I want to talk to an operator.
Yeah.
Well, I don't understand that. You're gonna have to try again later.
Representative.
You're gonna have to
Nothing.
try again later. It's like, oh,
Uh,
yeah,
no. We didn't leave much.
technology.
Yes, we didn't leave much time to talk about the stories that you're following there at 98.9 WXCO in Wausau, which is fine because it just lets me share the one thing and take issue with the way that it's framed. This from the Wausau Pilot and Review.
Yeah.
The village of Cronenwetter will again take up the issue of removing fluoride from its drinking water during a public meeting this week as sharp debate continues among residents and public health experts nationwide. No, 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 no. No, it's not as sharp debate continues. Debate makes it sound like there can be, an honest disagreement between the two. Or hear me out, Chad, you could go with science and not the people wearing tinfoil.
Well,
Just
that's
me, just me, you know?
and people should check out the story because basically it's framed that way. You got one part of the debate is science, and the other quackery.
Well, we heard this, and so we don't want this fluoride protecting us in our water. Fluoride, one of the best public health measures of our time in terms of oral health. But anyway, you go ahead and debate, quote unquote, that Cronenwetter. Chad Holmes from 98.9 WXCO. Thank you. As always, glad you're back safe. Enjoy.
Thank you, Pat.
When we are all back together in our next half hour, we'll be talking to Dan Shafer. A local update is next for some of you here on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
Let's look at some national headlines here as we come up on 8:23, just ahead of Dan Shafer joining us here. One of them coming from the Associated Press talks about the way that nursing homes are struggling with Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Nursing homes were already having a tough problem recruiting staff. And now Trump is attacking one of their few reliable sources of workers, and that would be immigration. Go figure. I mean, I saw a great editorial cartoon yesterday. On the left was the cartoon showed President Obama going, "We got bin Laden." And on the other side, it's Trump at the same podium going, "We got Maria from housekeeping at the Holiday Inn Express." Not the same. Not the same at all in terms of, who an administration should be targeting versus supporting. And again, there is one right answer to all of this, and it's immigration reform. It's immigration reform. If you're calling for mass deportations, you're wasting my money. You're putting a lot of other people in danger. You're not using those resources for things it could be used for. It's totally a either racist and or political power play. Nothing but that. When you could be using that time instead to work on immigration reform, because we have never needed immigration reform and legal immigration in our lifetimes more than we do right now as the baby boomers continue to move off stage, shall we say. And so nursing homes are one example of it. And I can hear people saying now, well, we're going to get all those lazy bums off of welfare and Medicaid, and they're going to take these jobs in housekeeping and other things. Seriously, do you think your mom is going to be doing as well in a nursing home when the staff is made up of people resentful that they have lost their own Medicaid coverage? Which leads to this story about immigration. And I've wondered this for a long time. And it's not just the Trump administration, but they're the ones in power right now. The headline says from Sophie Carson of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, "Why is the Trump administration focused on undocumented immigrants, not their employers?" The last time that there was significant immigration reform in this country was 1986. President Ronald Reagan and Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill, a Democrat, came together to pass immigration reform because Reagan did understand the value of immigration, as still do most Americans, understand that is what this country is. That is our DNA. That immigration reform back in 1986 called for some stiffer penalties on employers. That was something that, Ronald Reagan had to compromise on. But maybe Reagan knew this. Maybe it was just other people that knew it. You can agree towards stiffer penalties on employers, but if you don't go after the employers, they're not going to pay the stiffer penalties. And by and large, ever since, we have seen federal government and law enforcement crackdowns on the migrants themselves, the people who walked through jungles and risked their lives to get here, to get away from political violence, to give their children a better opportunity. These are the people I would rather have living next door to me than some of the people waving signs that say mass deportation now, because I know which one is actually going to be true to American values of hard work and safety and opportunity. But we don't go after the employers, even though it's right there in the law that hiring undocumented migrants is something where you can be, prosecuted. Now, the key word here in this is knowingly, as Sophie notes in her article, saying that, well, it's the people, the employees who submit fraudulent identity documents, and that the employer must examine the papers. And it's a lot easier for the employer to say, well, we didn't knowingly hire this person that they were undocumented. These are the papers that they gave us. Sure. In much the same way that there are people with fake IDs who still get into bars. More people will get in if you never really bothered to look at the ID in the first place, if you never really bothered to see if the bouncer at the bar is indeed even trying to crack down on keeping underage people from coming into your bar. Instead, it's easier to, instead of coming down on the bar owner, it's easier to crack skulls of the people who are there and disappear them to other places, even if they haven't broken any laws. And again, please stop with the response of, oh, they broke the law as soon as they came in here. That's what makes them illegals. They're not illegals. They're human beings who violated a misdemeanor. coming into this country, a speeding ticket. Why is it like that? Because again, we are a land of immigrants and of opportunity. And the sooner we can put people back in office who do not use immigration for racist or partisan purposes, the sooner then that we can fix our worker shortage and improve our economy and make sure that the people who are our loved ones who end up in nursing homes, the way I started this segment, are going to have staff that are there because they want to work, because they want to care, and we'll take care of them. One other quick note, and this one gets to another one of, something that sticks in my craw about folks who are anti-government, and they're especially anti-government regulation. They see all regulation as red tape. And it was this headline from Camp Mystic down in Texas, where the flash flooding killed so many girls and so many others. Federal regulators over the years granted appeals to remove Camp Mystic's buildings from their 100-year flood map. They removed the buildings from the floodplain map, which loosens the oversight on the way the camp is operated. And I got that occasionally as a legislator. People saying, hey, can you get this part out of the floodplain map? Because otherwise we can't rebuild. We have to tear it down, whatever. My answer was pretty simple. No, you're in a floodplain. It was one of my first earmarks as a legislator, was to clear some buildings out of a floodplain so we don't have to keep paying to fix them and rebuild them. And yet that was allowed to happen at Camp Mystic over and over again to tragic results. Dan Shafer is up next. You're up north. Dan Shafer is moments away. First, a little bit of housekeeping. I hate when I do this, when I say I'm going to talk about something and then I forget to get to it in the next segment. And I realize that in talking about our question of the week, and it was about the Democratic Party, and the options from our Sunday newsletter were A, it's good that the party appears to be drifting to the left. It's more honest. B was, nope, the Democrats are a big tent party. They can have people with progressive values from throughout the spectrum. Option C was, nope, the far left is going to drag down the Democratic Party, and we need to stop this. And I said that there was an option D. As I'm looking back at the answers, there were a couple of people. Option D was, I'm Republican. I'm just here with a box of popcorn to watch the fighting amongst Democrats about whether Zoran Mondani is, something that's good or bad for the party, along with AOC and Bernie Sanders and others. So again, if you want to answer that question of the week, sign up for our Sunday newsletter or send us a note, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. Dan Shafer, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mr. Kreitlow. Thanks so much for having me. Always a treat to join you here on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow.
It is always great to have you here. Thank you for that. Let's start with one story I haven't mentioned yet, and I'm going to explain why, and I want to know if you have any input on it. And it's because it's a rather an alarming headline. Laura Schulte put it out on the Journal Sentinel website. Lack of funding in the state budget will shutter 2 facilities for homeless veterans, including one here in Chippewa Falls. And the story says because Republicans in the legislature didn't include funding for them in the budget signed earlier this month. Governor Evers, I know, put out a press release yesterday blasting Republicans for not funding the Veterans Housing and Recovery Program. And as a result, these facilities are looking to be closed, I believe, sometime in September, was what the article said. And I know it notes that the co-chairs of the Joint Finance Committee, Mark Bourne of Beaver Dam and Howard Markline of Spring Green, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. I just haven't popped off on it because it just sounds, I don't want to say it sounds one-sided, but I was waiting to see any kind of Republican reaction that says, oh, no, we're going to fund these things. Because, if you take this story at face value, Dan, and homeless veterans are going to be kicked out because Republicans wouldn't fund what Governor Evers wanted in the budget, that is amazingly damning to Republicans if that is the full story.
Well, and the thing is that it doesn't seem like a huge line item to be able to fund with the state budget like this. The story you referenced from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel says Evers included $1.9 million for the Veterans Housing and Recovery Program in his proposed budget, which was cut by Republicans. So you'd think somehow we'd be able to find that funding, but also why are we cutting this to begin with? It's very bizarre.
I think it's one of those cases where, again, they brought Evers' funding request down to zero just because
it wasn't anything Evers was proposing,
right.
I guess.
And then they went back to some of them, and we've talked about this a little bit earlier with childcare and other things, and they did put some money back in after they took it to zero. And I almost, again, I'm speculating, almost think that some Republicans are looking at this story and going, oh, crap, we forgot to put money back into that one, And Tony puts up on YouTube, don't you remember what Kristen Lyerly said yesterday? Farmers and veterans only get lip service, not real action. That's reserved for rich donors. And again, if that's the case, that's terrible. I do have one solution, however, and allow me to pontificate for a moment here. This veterans home in Chippewa Falls got done in large part, 95%, because of former state Senator Dave Zine. And about 5% from former Senator Pat Kreitlow, who was in office when the project got over the finish line. Dave Zine's gotten the lion's share of the credit. He deserves it. He's still out there being very active. And one of his pet causes was homeless veterans. So if anybody can give his fellow Republicans a wake-up call and say, what are you doing here? You got to fund this thing. It would be former state Senator Dave Zine. So Dave, if you're listening, or anybody that knows Dave, look, if this is a real story, you guys got to jump on this right now. And I'm sure Governor Evers would sign that bill in a heartbeat if you pass it. Again, Dan, assuming it's just some kind of an oversight, which in a big complex budget can happen, I guess.
I guess so. And perhaps this is something that, it was such a rushed process at the end of the budget, right? Maybe all parties involved somehow missed this piece of it as well, because this seems like the type of thing that, if Evers was saying, hey, we need to fund this project, these need to stay open. Evers has been going around kind of celebrating his budget for the last couple of weeks and doing some events statewide and touting it, and to come back and also say like, oh yeah, here's this thing that the legislature didn't do. He also didn't sign it in the budget either, so it maybe there's mistakes on all fronts, and this could get remedied quickly, because it really sure seems like it should be.
Especially when it comes to something this rushed. We'll get to Governor Evers and the governor's race in a sec, but there's one other news story that we haven't talked about, and it's about Justice Rebecca Bradley, the far-right justice whose term is up next year, and people expect that she would announce for re-election, and it would be a big race against, theoretically right now, appeals court judge Chris Taylor, a former Democratic legislator. The story is that Rebecca Bradley reported raising no campaign cash in the last reporting period, which immediately people started saying, oh, does this mean she's not going to run for re-election? No, it doesn't mean that at all in my estimation, because this is not the first time that she has reported raising next to nothing. And it's a 10-year term, Dan. So, it's not the world's biggest surprise, but it is a surprise.
Yeah, it is a surprise. I think, I was talking to some people in various political circles over the last couple of weeks, and people were looking ahead to this announcement, to this filing deadline for Rebecca Bradley, to see kind of what her plans were. It was the announcement last week that Chris Taylor had raised more than $580,000 in this same reporting period, breaking Susan Crawford's record from the equivalent time period a year ago. And so I think some people were wondering, well, is Rebecca Bradley, it seems like if she's running again, she would at least have the lights on her website or whatever it might be to be able to take donations. With how many people, the last Supreme Court race in Wisconsin got more than $100 million. You think she'd be able to raise something if she was going, even if she wasn't actively campaigning. I saw some reporting out there that she, wanted to make a decision after Labor Day or whatever it might be. Even if she's not actively campaigning, if she's at all thinking about running again, you'd think she'd be able to receive some donations in any capacity. And I know there was a report from right-wing radio talker Mark Belling who put something out a few weeks ago saying he did not think that Rebecca Bradley was going to be running for re-election. Perhaps he's right on this, because it sure doesn't, based on the filing, and I took a look at that yesterday after I saw some of the reports, the filing, based on that, it does not seem like she's running again.
It certainly wouldn't on its surface. Now, I would caution people that from Donald Trump to Ron Johnson and others, there is this new Republican outlook that, again, the campaign rules don't mean anything anymore. And that, again, entities, political action committees not associated with the campaign directly are essentially the cavalry, and they ride to the rescue. And perhaps that's what Rebecca Bradley is thinking as well, is that, hey, when it's time, when it's game on, there will be plenty of money from, the Diane Hendricks and the Uihleins and, all those others to come in. Maybe that's what she's thinking. But I would also note this as well. Part of the reason you should be raising campaign donations anyway is that even if you don't run for re-election, you now have amassed something that you can then transfer to either a political action committee and be a donor yourself of causes you believe in, or you can donate it to charity or anything like that. And I'm not saying campaign donations are supposed to be an act of benevolence, but there's reasons why, Dan, you wouldn't want to raise $0. That's still money that you can put to work in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and again, it's just, if she were in the mix at all for this, right? If you would think that she would have something, like it wouldn't be, the number wouldn't be zero. Yeah. The fact that the number is zero does seem to suggest she might not be running for re-election. And certainly she is at quite a disadvantage. If she were running for re-election, she'd be at quite a disadvantage against Taylor, who has quite a bit of money in the bank right now for her election campaign. So, yeah, I think there is a big picture. There's a real chance, even if Bradley does run, I wouldn't exactly put her as the favorite in this race. She's been the most far-right member of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. She's the remarks that she makes in some of these rulings are out of this world. And so I do think she would not necessarily be a favorite to win again if she were to seek another 10-year term. I think part of the reason she won in the first place was that she ran during the 2016 primary, which at the time, Wisconsin was really very much in the spotlight for the 2016 presidential primary when Donald Trump was running. And Donald Trump did not win in Wisconsin in that election, but it brought a lot of people to the polls. And that's the time that she won.
We're talking to Dan Shafer, political editor for Civic Media and founder of the Recombobulation Area. Let's turn to the governor's race for a sec. We're still on Evers' watch in terms of, a third term or not. So let's go with the things that we do know. Earlier in the show, we played our interview from last Friday with Washington County Executive Josh Schoeman, who is one of the two announced Republican candidates for governor. I know you were listening into that interview. It was short, but for what you could hear from Josh Schoeman, what were your impressions?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting conversation. I thought it was great that you guys found him there at the Northern Wisconsin State Fair. That seemed like a fun, small Wisconsin type of meetup there. But one comment he made did stick out to me that I thought was interesting. He noted that about the budget negotiations. You guys brought up the budget. He noted that in those negotiations, Democratic Minority Leader in the Assembly, Greta Neubauer, had mentioned she was not part of the budget negotiations. And I thought it was interesting that Schoeman said, hey, she wasn't part of these negotiations. That if I were governor, I'd want all parties involved to be part of these budget negotiations. I thought that was an interesting kind of in the weeds ish type of remark where it's not just, a campaign platitude. I grew up here. This is my job, all of those different things. And, actually remarking on something in recent state government that I thought was, certainly something that we've talked about about the negotiations that went into the final phase of the budget there. But I thought that was a pretty interesting remark.
And look, that remark itself may be a platitude. It could be that he becomes governor, invites her to the table, and then does absolutely nothing with it. But as a candidate, that is absolutely a little thing to take advantage of. And then we have the other announced Republican candidate, Bill Berrien, who's announced a big 6-figure buy of TV commercials for the governor's race next year for commercials that are going to air now. That is crazy to me, but I guess that's, if you've never held political office, I guess that's how you build name ID, Dan.
You got to get yourself out there if you're the quote unquote political outsider in the race, right? So he has, billed himself as such in his initial introductory video and press release and all of that. And I think the big thing here in this race, and I think in Republican politics more broadly, but certainly in this race, I think the big thing is the Trump endorsement. So if he's going to get himself on TV and make himself out there and over again in that introductory video, we'll have to see what the TV spots look like. But in the introductory video, he's saying, certainly trying to tie himself as closely as he can to Donald Trump.
Absolutely taking the what he hopes is the Tony Weed path to a Trump endorsement. Local update is next for some of you. Others will come back here for some final news and notes from Lake Wissota along with Dan Shafer. Again, you can follow my team all day at upnorthnewswi.com and, of course, right here mornings on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Well, again, we're in the All-Star break, so that game is tonight, so the Milwaukee Brewers are off. They will be back come Friday in Los Angeles for a series against the Dodgers. You can hear the Brewers on several stations across the Brewers radio network. And also wanted to remind you that if you can't catch us live, you can podcast us. Head over to Spotify and become a follower there so that you can get our show on demand or listen back to something like this. You're hearing the wit and wisdom of Dan Shafer, and you want to go back and go, what did he say again? And you can do that by listening to us in podcast form. Dan, let's get back to the governor's race. We've talked about the 2 Republican candidates. Let's talk about the 1 Democratic candidate, potentially. That would be Governor Tony Evers. And now, of course, everybody watching the tea leaves for any kind of activity. Can I assume that, again, it's only a couple of days removed from the budget, that there's been no inklings yet one way or the other?
I haven't heard any inklings one way or another, and I don't think I'd be the one to know at this point after I've had my say.
I was sure that the governor would say, you know what, buddy, you're right. I'm going to give you the scoop on this one.
Yeah, but
you don't see that coming?
No, don't see that one coming right now.
Okay. All right.
But we're all on pins and needles waiting for the governor's decision. I think it's certainly been the hot topic post budget right now to see what's next for the governor. But he's gonna make his decision on his own time, and he's earned that. So yeah.
And let me say that this is writ large of Democrats. I'm not going to name names, but as we've reached out to Democrats to either appear on the show or talk to them about news stories or anything, you can just feel them flinching. You can just feel them go, don't ask me about this. I can't talk about this right now until the governor makes a decision one way or the other. But of course, we're all dying to know. We'll pick on State Senator Kelda Roy. She was on a few days back. She's on frequently. And you just know, she's like, oh, God, we're going to talk about this again. And you have to give the safe answer till you know what it is. So
yeah.
Forgive any skittishness that you might see out there. To get back to the state budget, and we talked about the homeless veteran facilities, but what an interesting microcosm we've had just on this show alone in our first 2 days on the air in Green Bay, where we've had an Assembly rep, Amado Rivera Wagner, and a Senator, Jamie Wall, both Democrats, one voting against the budget, one voting for the budget, and both very clearly stating the earnest reasons why you would do one or the other. And I mean, that's a trend we're just going to see for a while, where not everybody's going to be happy, Dan, but the reaction is still coming in from all folks, and it really depends on whether they want to see the glass as half empty or half full.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, those conversations that you've been having, I thought our friend Mark Becker at the Rational Revolution had a great conversation with State Senator Kristen Dassler-Alfheim on her vote on the budget. She was also one of the state senators who voted in favor of it. It's the nature of compromise, right? But I do think there is certainly a little bit of a difference between the state Senate Democrats being at the table and Assembly Democrats not being at the table in these negotiations. And, that perhaps coloring some perceptions from people, that most Democrats voted against this budget. I think we're still seeing some of the fallout from that. There was a rally at the Capitol in Madison with some child care providers expressing some frustration, to say the least, with some of the components of the child care. The compromise that went into the child care budget, raising of those ratios from 1 to 4 to 1 to 7, and some of the other details there that went into that I think the way that the child care providers characterized it was compromising provider safety. So I think that's something not to be taken lightly as well. I think, there's still a lot of questions with this budget, especially after it came together in such a discombobulating way, Pat.
Yes, it did. Way to stay on brand. Look, when I keep talking about the bipartisan nature of the vote, that is in no way meant to undersell and I mean this word, anger felt by education advocates about the zero increase in general aids, and by child care providers about funding that only runs for 1 year and provides no stability whatsoever. So I just wanted to say again that when I talk about Democrats and Republicans voting for or against and some people not liking it, people want to go, oh, well, if some people don't like it, it must have been a good bipartisan budget. Oh, no. The things that some people don't like, they are rightly incensed that they're not in there. And you're going to keep hearing about this from child care providers, from education advocates, now from veterans advocates. These folks they're not just unhappy with the budget. They are furious.
There is some real anger out there with the budget, that's for sure. And add into that the decision the UW system had to make last week with raising tuition because they didn't get long-term increases in funding. Most of the funding that went to the UW, and there was a lot of really important funds that made it into the budget, but a lot of them were capital projects. So there are one-time expenditures on buildings, on various improvements in infrastructure within the UW system. I know the Polk Library, my alma mater at UW Oshkosh, is getting redeveloped. And so I think a lot of those increases are there, but it didn't really fund the system increases in the long term too. So you also had, I think some of the three main components of the budget that the Evers administration was really dug in on was K-12 education, childcare, and UW system funding. And I think we're seeing even, the difficulties of compromise. Yes, they got a budget passed over the finish line. Yes, it includes a lot of wins that wouldn't have been otherwise had Senate Democrats not come to the table, but it still doesn't go far enough. And I think I liked the way that Senator Dassler-Alfheim characterized this on Rational Revolution as saying, this is hopefully the last crappy budget that we'll have to pass.
We can all hope for that. Dan Shafer, you can read what he puts out on Civic Media as their political editor, and of course, subscribe over at the Recombobulation area as well. Dan, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Be well.
You bet. Can't wait to talk to you after the All-Star break about what happens with the Brewers there. Right now, I'm still lighting candles for Sal Frelick and his hamstring. Tomorrow on the program, State Representative Christian Phelps will be here to talk about the lifting of an enrollment cap on voucher schools and what that could do in terms of blowing a hole in the budget, paying for tuition for all these private schools. I'm Pat Kreitlow, founding editor of Up North News. Up North News is part of Courier Newsroom, a pro-democracy news network. Have yourself a great Tuesday. We will see you back here bright and early Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. here up north.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.